So, Lone Rider here, and I just wanted to talk about the issue of environmentalism and where it sits now, and should somebody consider themselves an environmentalist or not, in the modern sense anyway. Now, this actually wasn't prompted by talk of the so-called Green New Deal. This was actually prompted by an epiphany I had this morning. I was down at the car place getting my vehicle serviced, and having a cup of coffee that was provided by the car dealership, looking around for a place to put a receptacle to put the empty coffee cup after I was done. And of course they had several bins there, but all the bins were recycling specific. There was no garbage bin. So I ultimately had to go outside and throw it in a garbage bin that was outside the front door. But anyway, the bins that were there, the recycling bins, really made me think. They were all green, and they were covered in logos and slogans and leaves and little hearts and "We love the earth." And sat there scratching my head and saying to myself, that's not having the intended effect on me, right? I think the thing is, people are supposed to see that and be like, well, hey, that's awesome, man. Good for you. I kind of looked at it and I said to myself, why does that strike me as vaguely obnoxious? Maybe a little tone deaf, maybe a little over the top, maybe too much tooting of your own horn. I didn't have to think very long because the answer was obvious. It's a car dealership, okay? Now, I have no problem with companies that want to take stands on issues of the day, as long as they realize that, depending on how they do it, they might, alienate some of their customers and lose business. But, I mean, that's their prerogative. If they want to lose business, that it's equally possible they might appeal to other people who have a different opinion and actually gain their business. So, if you want to do that, in addition to actually doing whatever your company's supposed to do, such as generate energy, build cars, serve sandwiches, whatever it is that you're in business to do. If in addition to that you want to, stake out positions on issues of the day or even politics, yeah, it's your right to do that. But your primary obligation is to do whatever you're in business to do, or you're going to go out of business. But I have no problem with people doing that, and as long as they realize that if they tick me off, they're not going to get my business, and vice versa. But this just seemed so over the top. I was like, wow, well, why does this strike me as the way it strikes me, right? Not because I didn't understand the kind of hypocrisy of a car, business being so gung-ho about the environment, but because I should be their target demographic for that message, right? I bike, I hike, I shoot my bow outdoors. I'm not glued to an Xbox 24/7. I don't even own an Xbox. I don't even own an iPhone. That actually came up at work the other day. Somebody's like, oh yeah, there's this new app you can check your schedule, and I was like, I don't get apps, okay? My phone has buttons, and everybody just kind of looked at me weird and they're like, you don't have an iPhone? And I was like, why the hell would I want one? Right? It's just but I spend time outdoors. The activities I do participate in are activities that are genuinely, taking place in the natural world. And the people who typically engage in those activities tend to have a certain view of the environment. And surprise, my view is often not that dissimilar. For example, I believe we should do whatever we can to protect the natural world, and I believe we should, preserve it as best we can. The difference is why I believe we should do that, right? I don't believe we should preserve the natural world because it's some kind of Kantian imperative directive on high from God or Moses or Gaia, the Earth Mother, or Zeus or Apollo. I believe that we should do it because it's in our own rational self-interest as people, and we benefit from it. And the problem is, that is where me and the environmentalists part ways, right? This epiphany didn't happen overnight. It didn't start with all the hullabaloo over the Green New Deal, and it didn't start with the looking at the overly branded faux garbage cans at the car dealership. It actually really started way, way back when I first got into cycling and advocating for cycling. One of the things that I found very quickly was that a lot of people talk a good game about how they want to, be accepting of bicycling, and they think bicycling is wonderful for the environment. But when it comes time to actually sharing the road with a handful of cyclists, they're just as intolerant and small-minded as they were before they opened their mouths about that. They apparently like the idea of saying that cycling is cool because it fits with the view that they've been taught they're supposed to have about the environment. But when it comes down to actually having to put their money where their mouth is, as it were, they would just as soon kill you as, any other clueless driver, right? They don't want you there. They can't even exercise a bare minimum of care to, refrain from committing a vehicular homicide. The same thing with cycling in the woods, although that was even more obvious a problem between the conventional belief that cyclists and environmentalists are natural allies, right? They want they want more people on bikes because bikes don't pollute and it gets you outside and appreciating the natural world. So you think they'd also be okay with people biking in the woods and appreciating that, right? Getting personally invested in that so they care about preserving it? Wrong. A lot of groups, whether it's the Sierra Club or local NIMBY types or whomever, are perfectly willing to work with mountain biking advocates in order to get tracts of land preserved from development. But the first thing they almost invariably do afterwards is try and kick the bikers out after they've utilized their efforts to help with the conservation of said land. So they're perfectly willing to work with you to preserve an area of the environment, but they don't want you to be able to access it. And this really started me down the path of thinking, okay, we should be coming from the same place. I bike, I enjoy the outdoors, I spend time outside. To me, going to the woods is like recharging my batteries, right? I don't just ride because whether it's on the street or whether it's mountain biking, I don't just ride for the exercise or for, because it's cheap and doesn't take gas, or even because I enjoy the tinkering with the gears and the paraphernalia, the bikes and the all the cool gadgets that go with it. I bike because to me it's and in particular, outside. I own a trainer. I don't really use it because the way I'm thinking, and if I'm going to bike, I'm going to be outdoors with the wind going through my helmet vents. That's why I do it, right? So I'm sitting there and I'm like, I do this because to me, it's something that I can do for no other reason than the fact that it puts a smile on my face. And you can't say that about a lot of things. But for me, that's what it is. When I'm out there on the bike, there's no boss, there's no this, there's no that. It's literally like that line from the old Billy Joel song, Vienna. Take the phone off the hook and disappear for a while. That's why I bike. Your mileage, literally, may vary. But the point is that, to me, it's personal. And cycling has gotten me through some tough times, made me able to, do things and wrap my mind around things. You think a lot when you're out on the bike. It's been helpful, right? It's been helpful. I've benefited from it, I think, as a person. I think it's given me perspective. It's allowed me to see things I wouldn't otherwise have seen and had experiences I wouldn't otherwise have experienced. And it's awesome. I mean, I can't stress that enough. But then the question becomes, wait, you don't want me to do that, right? You You might be okay with me riding in the street, although not if I'm on the same road as you. That's just a bumper sticker slogan as far as you're concerned. You don't really actually care about that. But then when it comes to off-road cycling, you're not just a little bit hostile to the idea of having to share space with me. When it comes to off-road cycling, you flat out want me banned, and you cast aspersions on me and suggest that I'm going to destroy the environment with my mountain bike. What's up with that? I thought we were coming from the same place. We both love nature, no? We both love being outdoors. Wrong. See, it turns out that whereas I believe we should preserve nature because we benefit from it at a very personal level. We benefit from interaction with the natural world. We benefit from getting out there and not just in the physical sense of exercise and stretching your legs and this and that, but in the sense of stretching your mind, right? In the sense of being able to relax, being able to chill, being able to recharge your emotional batteries. There's a very real and personal benefit to being able to do this, right? And I cannot separate my desire to preserve the natural world from the fact that I personally benefit from that. So I'm looking at this from the standpoint of, why do I want to preserve the natural world? Well, I mean, in a nutshell, because I benefit from it and enjoy it. If I didn't benefit from it and enjoy it, would I care? Very probably not. Now, the environmentalist is coming at it from a different standpoint. And when I say environmentalist, I don't mean all environmentalists throughout history. I mean environmentalist in the modern sense. The 21st century environmentalist. They're coming to this from an ideological standpoint. To them, all it's about is staking out a position of moral superiority over their fellow citizens. They may not even own a bicycle. They may not spend any time in the woods, hiking, biking, fishing, shooting their bow, whatever. In fact, the only time they spend any time outdoors might be when they're running between their car or the Uber they rented on their iPhone and their front door so they can get back inside and turn on their Xbox. They may not even ever have seen woods outside of maybe Central Park in New York. So, what gives, right? Well, if my take on it is we should work to preserve the natural world because it benefits us as people. The environmentalist seems to be coming from the standpoint that it is a dictate handed down from on high, whether from Moses or Zeus or Apollo or Gaia or whomever, that this is some kind of Kantian imperative that you just have to do in and of itself. And that in fact, not only is it considered not really good to admit that you have any personal stake in the issue, in fact, saying that the reason you want to preserve the natural world is because you personally benefit from it, to them, that's almost like, that's almost worse than saying you want to bulldoze all the forests and, destroy it, right? Because you're not pure. You're not coming from that position of ideological purity. You're just looking at it as something in the real world, not as an abstraction. The problem is it is in the real world. And with this in mind, and with the fact that this ideological commitment not only exists independent of whether or not these people actually participate in any outdoor activities or actually care about the environment, as a real thing, you also have the fact that legitimate environmental concerns have recently become sort of a smokescreen, no pun intended, to use to advance government policy of other types, right? There are a lot of people, the Green New Deal comes to mind, who seem to be using, concerns people may or may not have about environmental issues as a stalking horse or as a decoy to just, you know, implement political changes that they want for other reasons, right? And I have to look at all of this and ask myself, you know, the hostility of many environmentalists to cycling, whether, you know, whether it's their hypocrisy about cycling on the roads or whether it's the out and out hysteria that gets directed against mountain bikers, who they're willing to work with only so far and then throw under the bus, and who many groups like the Sierra Club have a you know, despite claiming to work with mountain bike groups, I mean, they have a policy position that's outlined in their documents of, whenever possible, excluding mountain bikes from public lands. Then I have to look at, you know, the fact that, to me, this is a deeply personal thing. It matters to me because it matters to me. Whereas for these people, it's like a catchphrase. It's like a slogan, you know. To them, I mean, they, again, the most time they might spend outside is walking between their car and their Xbox. And then you have the unsavory politics that are often involved. The unsavory you know, political measures that are often put forth under the guise of environmentalism. And all of this comes together, and I got to say to myself, can I call myself an environmentalist? And I would say not. I would say, despite how much I care about the natural world, despite how much I enjoy and benefit from it, despite how much I might argue that my viewpoint is truly the one that's, you know, environmentally conscious, to use the catchphrase of the moment, I would argue I'm not an environmentalist. Not anymore. I might be considered an outdoorsman. I might be considered a conservationist. But I cannot in good conscience call myself an environmentalist. And I'll just leave you one brief aside that sort of sums this up. Some years ago, back in, it was like 08 or 09, I came back from a long bike ride and I was very tired. It was like a 50-mile hilly ride. I was slimmer back then. And I had just come back and plopped myself down in my chair and turned on the stereo, and the doorbell rang. So I went to the door, still wearing my bike jersey and my shorts, and it was a young, very earnest young man with a clipboard saying, "Won't you sign my petition?" The petition was to reduce air pollution from automobiles. Right? Now, I'm not really all that concerned about what he called greenhouse gases, but many of these same things coming from automobile engines do have actual, legitimate concerns in terms of conventional pollution. I mean, I've hiked up when we were in Arizona. When I was in Arizona as a youngster, I hiked up into the mountains outside Phoenix. I looked down. I saw the air over the city, pea soup green. I mean, there are legit pollution problems associated with air pollution, whatever you think about greenhouse gases. So I was all set to consider signing this guy's petition. And I noticed there was a huge Chevy Tahoe idling across the street. And I asked the guy, I was like, "How'd you get here?" And he said, "Oh, I drove." And he pointed at the idling Chevy Tahoe truck. And then he handed me, once again, the clipboard with his petition for restricting air pollution from internal combustion engines and said, "So are you going to sign this or what?" And I just looked at him and I said, "I just got back from a 50-mile bike ride. Good day." I handed him his clipboard and closed the door. I wasn't trying to be rude, but given the hypocrisy there and the fact that I had just, you know, gotten to the point where it was flagrantly obvious to me, I think I handled it kind of well. But the reason I brought it up is because that's the difference between the environmentalist and the outdoorsman or the conservationist, right? To me, I can't in good conscience call myself an environmentalist because, to me, all an environmentalist means anymore is a person who exploits legitimate concerns about the natural world for political gain, or who, you know, talks about it a good deal but doesn't really do anything. In fact, maybe does the opposite. Maybe they're sitting there in an idling Chevy Tahoe. I mean, yes, I drive too. This whole thing came into my mind because I was at the car dealership getting my car fixed. But my car is not a Chevy Tahoe. It's a little 4-cylinder station wagon with a stick shift and not many fancy extras. And yeah, for local trips, a lot of times I'm biking or walking. So, yeah, that to me is the difference between an environmentalist and somebody who really cares about the environment. And to me, I can't call myself an environmentalist. And like I said, this all started because I looked at that green recycling can while I was looking for a place to put my coffee cup at the car dealership and said to myself, this green can covered with hearts and flowers and we love the earth, why does that strike me? Why does it not strike me the way it should strike me, considering I'm supposed to be, as a cyclist and an outdoors person, the target demographic for this message? And it really got me thinking. And what it's really made me think of is that, like I said, the reason it doesn't sit well with me is because that environmentalism, if you will, is not what I'm about. And it's not what I wouldn't want to be about what that's about. And to me, that's just rank hypocrisy. Right? Again, I mean, talk about tone deaf. So anyway, that's my take on, do I consider myself an environmentalist? No. But then again, according to the, traditional, what we used to think of when we thought of environmentalists, I'm not sure you could even say the environmentalists are environmentalists. I'm not sure you could say the people pushing the Green New Deal are environmentalists. Or car companies that talk about how much they love the earth on their recycling cans. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Subaru. So anyway, Lone Rider out. Just my take on that. But yeah, I can in good conscience call myself an environmentalist. And the irony is, the reason is because I actually care about the natural world.